Opportunity to try to bring everyone up to date on the Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. I will indicate my disclosures. As you know, the vast majority of our funding for our research studies is supported by the National Institute on Aging, but we also are fortunate to have foundation support as well as support from industry and the Alzheimer's Association. You can see my consulting relationships. So the Knight ADRC has many strengths, but I think its principal strength is all of you. And here is our last group photograph, and of course we'll have another one immediately following the presentation today. And apparently we are going to actually do this in, instead of using the stairs, we're going to have risers, and it's going to go very smoothly. If any of you remember the one the last time, it was not quite as smooth. So not only all of you, and you really are the premier Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, the faculty, the staff, but also we have just remarkable, as we are all appreciative, remarkable volunteers, over 800 now in the ADRC. Now, many of you have seen this depiction of 4 multi-component grants. We, I think, are really fortunate to be able to have this funding from the National Institute on Aging. It's only possible that I can be the principal investigator for all 4 of these grants because of 2 reasons. One, 3 of them are very closely integrated. The healthy aging and senile dementia, the adult children study, and the dominantly inherited Alzheimer's network all are the same theme, identifying antecedent biomarkers of Alzheimer's disease before the onset of symptomatic expression of the illness. But I'm also, of course, very fortunate to have terrific executive directors, associate executive director, and all layers of staff support. So that makes it possible. But look at this slide, because I don't think we'll be in this situation again. I think the funding situation is going to be not permissive of having so much funding concentrated in one principal investigator. And of course, I think also it's just harder and harder to have grants renewed. So this may be the high point of these four grants. I hope I'm wrong about that, but it is unique, to my knowledge, among other Alzheimer's centers, and we're, as I say, have been very fortunate to have this, but we're going to have to diversify in years to come, I'm quite certain. And we are trying to add grant support, even though our major funding agency, the National Institute on Aging, is having its own problems. Andrei Vlasenko and Mark Rakel submitted what used to be called a supplemental application, now called a revision application, to the program project for the adult children study to add metabolic studies, particularly of glycolysis, to our study, thinking that when metabolism changes, it may herald the transition from cognitive normality into symptomatic disease. We also, last week, submitted a revision application, a supplement to Diane, to provide more funding to increase our sample of asymptomatic mutation carriers and to add science projects to transform fibroblasts that we've been collecting here at Washington University in pluripotent stem cells, and also to do a comparator study, a correlation study of our current amyloid imaging tracer, Pittsburgh compound B, or PIB, and with the new F18 compound for later here. I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then Randy Bateman and Diane's Therapeutic Trials Unit, or TTU, is submitting a revision of his R01 to fund DIAN clinical trials. That's coming up in July. And then in January, we'll be faced with this reality that I was just talking about the limited funding and concentration of large grants in one principal investigator. We'll see what the hurdles are as we try to renew our Healthy Aging and Senile Dementia grant. So the ADRC, as you know, is the overall grant by which the outside world recognizes us, and it's our interactions with other ADCs, as well as things such as ADNI and the Alzheimer's Disease Cooperative Study Unit, but it's really HASD that is the sort of the heritage of what began here in 1979 with the first R01. So this is really our flagship program project grant, and we'll be working hard to get it renewed. Submission date in January of next year. So here's a snapshot of our participants. These are older adults, 65 and older. For some of you who utilize participants in your research or their images or their tissue, it's good to recognize what our cohort consists of. And you'll notice that the majority now are cognitively normal individuals, CDR 0, 356, because again of our theme of looking at the transition from cognitive normality into symptomatic disease, and can we identify those older individuals who are most at risk for becoming demented. So we have 356 cognitively normal individuals. You see their demographic characteristics. We have about not quite 250 CDR 0.5 and CDR 1 individuals. And we have very few CDR2 individuals, moderate dementia, because we no longer follow individuals once they reach the moderate stage of dementia. Now for HASD, we're going to return to trying to increase our studies of people in very mild, very early stage Alzheimer's disease, CDR 0.5, so we probably will build up the recruitment of those individuals. But some of you who run studies in our participants should know that at least at present we have relatively few people who we consider to have symptomatic Alzheimer's disease or dementia. And thanks to the work of Monique Williams and the African-American Outreach Satellite and our African-American Advisory Board, we've now, as of this month, have the highest percentage of enrollment of African Americans into our cohort that we've ever had, presently 15.5%. All right, so the adult children study, the active cohort, you know that we have two groups of individuals. And these are people 45 to 74 years at time of enrollment. We're in our second funding period, 5-year funding period, so people enrolled in that older age group, say 70 up to 74, 5 or 6 years ago, now have aged. You can see at the bottom that 35 of our original ACS participants are 75 years of age and or older now, so some of our ACS cohort really is congruent with the active cohort of HASD and ADRC. But you'll recall that we have two groups, one a group of individuals who had a parent affected with symptomatic Alzheimer's disease with age of onset before 80 years. And we wanted 40 individuals in each of three age groups, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, and 65 to 74. And you can see that their mean ages are right on, as they've aged. They were, the 45 to 50-year-old group at time of enrollment, the baseline age was 50, but now they're 55 because of the maturation of the cohort over time. We also wanted the same age groups and the same number, 40 individuals per age group, of individuals for whom neither parent had symptomatic Alzheimer's disease and lived at least to age 70. We did meet our target enrollment of 120, but this is the group that has a higher attrition rate than our group with a parent affected by Alzheimer's disease. So you see now we're down to 107. So ACS was renewed for funding for the next 5 years last September. Here are the recruitment goals that we have for this 5-year period. We want in budget year 1 to enroll 30 individuals, equally divided between those with a parental history and those without a parental history. In each of budget years 1 and 2, a total of 30, and then just a few in budget years 3, 4, and 5. Well, we're 3/4 through budget year 1, and we have only 7 enrolled individuals. They are divided between family history positive or parental history positive, parental history negative. But we really need to ramp up this ACS cohort. As I was cautioning earlier about how difficult it is to renew program projects and other applications, if we haven't achieved our goals, including our enrollment goals, it's really just that negative aspect alone may be sufficient to give us a score that's outside the fundable range. So we must meet our stated goals. So we need to ask all of us need to be thinking ourselves about individuals that we know through either work here or outside of work who might be candidates to participate in the adult children study. As with all of our projects, we ask an awful lot of our participants, so it's not a trivial task, but it is such an important study, and we really do need to enroll up to our goals. So I'm going to ask all of us to try to help with the enrollment. Becky Fearberg is the ACS coordinator. If you have people who potentially could be interested, Becky would be very happy to get their contact information, and she can explain the study to them. So in 3 months, we have to go about 23 individuals, so we must make that goal. So I say it's quite a comprehensive assessment, and here are the different assessment protocols that the group, ACS group, goes through, and you see how committed they are to research. Most all of them have completed the original protocols, baseline protocols at a very high rate, including lumbar puncture, almost 90%. And then for follow-up, look at the high follow-up rate for these procedures as well, if they're eligible for follow-up. And relatively few individuals are refusing the procedures, 6% or less, except for lumbar puncture. So it is really a tribute to how well these individuals agree to participate in research, and we have to also give them our appreciation for what they do, and we do have a special adult children study appreciation breakfast that will be in October of this year at the same river camp in the zoo. So Diane dominantly inherited Alzheimer's network. There were originally 10 Diane sites. We activated Pittsburgh. So we want to enroll a total of 400 individuals from families in which there is a known mutation that causes Alzheimer's disease, almost all early onset Alzheimer's disease. And you see that we're up around 255, maybe 260 on our way to our goal of 400. We think that we will be able to make that, but we are also interested in expanding that. That's the justification for that Diane revision application that went in last week. And of course, these individuals also are highly committed. You can see the completion rate of their different assessments, and it really is extraordinarily high, and clearly they're motivated as well to participate in research because of the certainty that a mutation carrier will develop symptomatic Alzheimer's disease. I want to give a note of acknowledgement and really congratulations to the Washington University site. You notice that we have 11 sites, with Washington University alone accounts for 20% of the enrollment. And its completion rate is very stellar. I think of the 52 individuals enrolled, at 50 attend lumbar puncture here. So it's really remarkable. Randy is Randy Gaten is the Washington University site PI, and Wendy Sigurdson is the nurse coordinator here. But it's really a terrific example then when we ask other sites to do lumbar puncture, and they say, oh, it's too difficult for our participants. We point out we see the same participants and we don't really have the same difficulty. So it's good to be the gold standard, and our team does a great job. Our entire Diane team does a fabulous job also, and Angela Oliver is the global coordinator, and she's working with all the sites to achieve these high rates of completion. I mentioned that Pittsburgh came on board last year. We're looking at other sites. Neograph Frankfurt at Mayo Clinic Jacksonville has a number of families, and we're in the process of getting him activated. The German Center for Neurodegenerative Research has funded 2 sites, one in Tübingen, one in Munich. We hope to get them operational. We're talking with a number of other sites. I list some here. We just found out over the weekend that an Italian consortium applied to the Italian Ministry for Health and was awarded a grant for 6 of their sites to participate in Diane. And we're talking not only with these sites, but others, including one in Toronto as well. So there's a great deal of interest in Diane because of the importance of the research when the biomarkers become abnormal in relation to when we think the person will develop symptomatic Alzheimer's disease, and almost always it's at roughly the same age as parent development, so we can see how many years there are of biomarker abnormalities, which abnormality occurs first, does it relate to amyloid, to tau, to something else, what is the rate of change, what is the sequence of events. It's an extraordinarily important research study, and of course it's a natural cohort for participation in clinical trials, and we'll talk about that in just a moment as well. So with a large group, I think we have some 78 faculty and staff who have some sort of salary support from the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. We are always adding new individuals, and you can see the list of individuals here. Carla Bordeaux is a new nurse clinician, Rachel Chassie, a psychometrician, June Chen in the biostatistics core. Andre Denny is now the assistant education core leader and will become the education core leader in October. Peggy Kelly was working with the post-stroke dementia project in HASD, but now is a nurse clinician in Memory and Aging Project. Nan Moore is an accounting assistant with us. Renate Reimers is a non-licensed physician from Germany. She was licensed in Germany, but is in the U.S. now and is training to become a Memory and Aging Project clinician. Yvette Rocket is a medical assistant in the Memory Diagnostic Center. David Bolo has joined us as a research patient coordinator. Linda Schiemoller is a nurse who's taken over the coordination of Project 1 post-stroke dementia. Suzanne Schindler, as of July, will complete her neurology residency here and join us as the new ADRC postdoctoral fellow, joining Eric Music, who we indicated last year as a postdoctoral fellow. From the Goldfarb School of Nursing, we have a fellow, a nursing graduate student there, Julia Seibert. Kathleen Vernon has joined our psychometric core. Cassie Ward is the coordinator, nurse practitioner in the Memory Diagnostic Center, and Sherry G is in the biostatistics core. We also have individuals who are leaving, and I won't go through each of them, but we congratulate congratulate Ileana and Rachel, who are in the psychometric group now, and both are going on to graduate school in psychology. And Lisa Taylor-Reinwald is leaving the neuropathology core, but going on to staying in the Department of Pathology and taking on a role with increased administrative responsibility. We'll point out that Christy Tomlinson, Christy, you've been with us how many years? 15?
12 and a half.
Well, it seems like is retiring, we think. Now, I think she's wavering. I think she may choose not to, but she is going to retire at the end of June, and we wish her all the best. And then I want to mention Dr. Wilkins and Dr. Williams. Both will be leaving within a few weeks. So Consuelo has been with us also for roughly 15 years and has really ascended in the Department of Medicine and the Division of Geriatrics and Nutritional Sciences to a number of very important university-wide roles, including the director of the new Institute for Public Health Center for Community Health and Partnerships. She's also led a Barnes-Jewish Hospital initiative to provide collaborative assessments to revitalize the elderly in the community, and she is very much involved in the community outreach and improving the health of our community older individuals. She, unfortunately, has risen so high that she's been the target for recruitment for other institutions, and will be leaving within just a few days to go to Nashville, where she will head a new alliance between Meharry Medical College and Vanderbilt School of Medicine to improve their community engagement in research. So this is a higher position for Consuelo, and we're sorry to see her go, but we congratulate her on her new position. Consuelo, are you here?
Right here. Right.
All right, congratulations. But we are sorry to see you go. So. And then Monique Williams has been with us for many years. She really approached the ADRC when she was an undergraduate student here at Washington University and worked with us then. I think Allison, wasn't she helping collect blood samples for genotyping back in the early 90s? And then she stayed at Washington University for her medical degree and her master's, and did her residency in internal medicine and her geriatric training here, and she's been working with us in the Memory and Aging Project since 2004, when Dorothy Edwards left to take a position in the University of Wisconsin-Madison. Monique was well suited to take over the leadership of our African-American outreach satellite, and has been its leader for the past 5 to 6 years. And she also is, unfortunately, been the target for recruitment, and this is a good thing that people develop their accomplishments within the umbrella of the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, but then that does position them for a greater opportunity, and she'll be leaving for Texas Tech University. I will be the interim leader of the African American Outreach Satellite until we identify a permanent leader. So Monique, it's like losing our student. Is Monique here today? And we will miss her very much as well. Then Markus Durrant. Markus Durrant's been at Washington University since 1956, and that means 56 years. She came here to go to undergraduate, and she stayed on for her doctoral degree in psychology, been on the faculty since 1968. And she really, as many of you know the story, led the scientific design of what Leonard Berg, the first director of the Memory and Aging Project, was trying to do to make it appropriate for scientific inquiry. She and Martha and her mentor Jack Botmanek really helped establish the approach to the Memory and Aging Project, and with their input, Leonard was able to have the first funding as an RO1 from the National Institute of Mental Health in 1979 to establish the Memory and Aging Project. So Martha was instrumental in the development of what now is the Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. And she also led the Aging and Development program in the Department of Psychology for many years. You note her publications, her contributions to Washington University, to the ADRC, to aging and development, in psychology, teaching and mentorship really is far beyond the list of her publications. She's been remarkable in her contributions. Psychometric leadership has always been under Martha, but for the past almost 2 years now, she and Jason Hassenstab have been working together, and when she officially retires, which I think is in 2 days, May 31st, then Jason will take over the leadership of that, of our Knight ADRC. So I just point out there's Martha and her mentor, Jack Bottleneck, in the 70s. There is Leonard Berg with a red tie in the middle, flanked by Jane Johnson and Markus Durrant and myself. There's Martha more recently, and I think Dave Belota, I'm not going to be able to fully describe this, but this is in the stone bench now in the Department of Psychology. I believe it reads in honor of Markus Durrant. Is that right? So we will miss Martha. She tells us that she's not going to go away. She'll continue to examine data, hopefully contribute to manuscripts, but she retires as of March 31st of May. So then, who's left? So I mentioned that original RO1 was funded in 1979. The first 56 control people, 44 CR1, and I think some 18 CR0.5 were established from 1979 to 1982. We still have one individual from that enrollment who is getting annual assessments. Then the project tried to renew itself in '82, didn't succeed. They rethought about it, and a man who was trying to get aging and dementia going at the National Institute on Aging, he was with the NIA at that point, Dr. Kachaturian, found they were having trouble getting their grant renewed through NIMH, so he said, why don't you package it as a program project and submit it to the NIA? And they did that in '83, and it was awarded with the start date of January 1, 1984. And these are the people, and then the following year, another application went in to fund the Alzheimer's Disease Research Center, so that was formally established in 1985. These are the people I can think about who were present in the mid-'80s when all of this was developing and still remain active in the overall operations of the Knight ADRC. If there are people on here I've missed, it's really my poor memory, it's not intentional, but on the other hand, it seems like a smaller list each year, but nonetheless, all of these people remain very much engaged and provide us, I think, with great institutional history about how things have gone, how they've evolved, and all of us have evolved as well. So this is a smaller but still very vital and very important group of individuals. So because you all are so talented, many of you have received awards acknowledging your accomplishments. So we don't have time or space to list every award, but I point out that earlier this month in New York City, Randy Bateman was given the Promising Investigator Award from the MetLife Foundation. Dave Holtzman was given the Alts Forum Extra Mile Award at the Society for Neuroscience meeting last fall from the Alts Forum. Markus Durrant, in her final year as a faculty member, was acknowledged by Washington University's Alumni Association as a distinguished faculty. At the end of April, James Williams, who is with the African-American Outreach Satellite, was honored with the Doris May and Harvey A. Friedman Award. and Dr. Williams received the Zealot Award from the Monsanto family of wives. So these are remarkable. You all are very, very talented and very accomplished. Randy Bateman also this month was named the Charles F. and Joanne Knight Distinguished Professor in Neurology. And we see the photograph of not only Randy, but Chuck and Joanne. And of course, their generous support over the past 7 years is the reason now we are the Knight ADRC. We're very fortunate as an ADRC to have great interactions with other entities, including our African-American Advisory Board. Ida Goodwin-Wolfberg is here, as she is our current chair of the African-American Advisory Board. I know there are other members of the board who are here, but Ida, we thank you and each board member for all of your contributions, and it's been just a very informative and enjoyable process to be able to try to make our ADRC more diverse. So let's thank Ida and the board members. I mentioned the 1980s as being really the formative time for what now is the Knight ADRC. It also was the formative time for the St. Louis chapter of the Alzheimer's Association. And I think many of the original members of the Alzheimer's Association were really families of Leonard Berg's patients. So Leonard was a key force in helping St. Louis to form its chapter. So we've always had tremendous partnership with the Alzheimer's Association, particularly our St. Louis chapter, which is the finest chapter in the Alzheimer's Association. It is in the association string. And Carol Rodriguez is here with some of her colleagues. So Carol, will you raise your hand and let's thank her. I, of course, as you know, I'm ethically challenged, so I decided to prevent myself from getting in too much trouble, and about 10 years ago, I think, we formed a volunteer group, internal ethics committee of the ADRC, to help advise on difficult issues. This group is remarkably dedicated to its task. It's led by Becky Fearberg and Terry Hosto. I don't know if there are volunteer members present of the ethics committee. You may not want to reveal yourself, but they've been great advisors. Some of you know that as of January 1, I've transitioned the directorship of the Hardy A. Friedman Center for Aging to Nancy Morrow-Howe, and she's already doing from the George Wharton Brown School of Social Work. She's doing a terrific job. And we all should, I believe, should be very grateful that our ADRC is here at Washington University. We have terrific support from the chancellor, from the dean, from our department chair, and also from our alumni development officers who have been just really remarkably effective for us. So it's a wonderful place, Washington University, for this interdisciplinary Alzheimer's disease research center, very collaborative, very collegial. And I think when people from other ADCs come and visit, they're always struck by that sense of collegiality and interaction. Well, here's the African American Advisory Board. They've been counseling us first under the leadership of Norman Say, and now, as I said, under Ida's leadership, and how to improve our outreach to the community in general, to the African American community in particular, and you see the members listed here. We have the 3 new members that I'll just highlight: Karen Collins, Ronald Gregory, and Sidney White. But all of them have been remarkably helpful. Speaking of Norman Say, when he stepped down as chair of the African American Advisory Board, we inaugurated a lecture in his name each year. And the 7th lecture, Norman R. Say lecture, will be this October 16th. We're very excited to have Taylor Hardin, who has a long resume within the National Institute on Aging. and particularly in terms of how we can engage special populations in research. So please note the date, and she's not only a very knowledgeable and very good communicator, she also is a very special person. You'll enjoy meeting her quite a bit. All right, highlights of the Knight ADRC this past year. Here's our productivity, about 100 publications in peer-reviewed journals a year. I mentioned that we're interdisciplinary. We represent 14 departments, not only here at the School of Medicine, but on the Danforth campus. Our pilot project program within the ADRC has been, just since 2010, has been very productive, generating an independent R01 and an R01 type project within a program project, K awards, and foundation awards. So that's a tribute again to the great faculty that we have. Just mentioned a few of the publications. I won't talk about them in any length, and we have 200 to choose from, so these were just randomly selected. I'll talk a little bit about the paper on MCI in a little more depth, but lots of biomarker work, and we looked also at the effects of lifestyle in terms of exercise and exercise and ApoE effects on who may have a likelihood of preclinical Alzheimer's disease. Kenji wrote a nice paper showing that ApoE is not the only factor associated with family history of a parent with Alzheimer's disease for people who are likely to be biomarker positive. We've looked at how we communicate our diagnoses to our participants and their families, and a number of studies of both of new biomarkers and how amyloid is regulated in the central nervous system. So a full breadth, range of different papers, and all of these have been, I think, influential. And we get lots of requests for our well-characterized participants, longitudinally studied, as well as their tissue and their neuroimages. It's getting to a point, I think, in Anne Fagan's biomarker core and Nigel's parents' neuropathology core, spend a lot of time now just fulfilling requests for tissue. So and Allison, genetics core has to do the same. We want to support people both within Washington University and outside of Washington University for access to that's our mission, is to support and foster research, but it's becoming administratively very, very difficult to fulfill all of the requests. So it's one of the if you will, the negative aspects of being successful. For those of you who are new to the ADRC and wish to request data, there are many things to consider. So, as I said, we've been around since '79, and so we have an incredibly rich longitudinal database, but not everything today is the same as it was in 1979. Yet most critically, our assessment protocol changed dramatically in 2005 when we, along with every other Alzheimer's disease center, adopted a uniform data set, changed some of the questions that we asked, some of the scales we obtained, and some of the psychometric measures that we administered. So if you say, give me everyone from 2000 to 2012, people before 2005 will have different data than the people after 2005. Not everything that we collect necessarily is entered into the database. So I have to be careful about what it is that you're asking for and to determine whether it's part of the database or you'll have to extract those data yourself. We have different cohorts. So the healthy aging, senile dementia, ADRC cohort, and the ACS are different on age. That's for certain. The Diane is different because of genetic mutation status. But we have other cohorts that are different. For a while, we were enrolling spouses of affected individuals into a project to boost the number of our control individuals. They had a very minimum assessment. So different cohorts may not be appropriate to include in the data set. And because of our younger status of many of our ACS individuals, we give them a more stringent psychometric test, so they don't have the same measures necessarily as people over age 65. So you have to know what you're, not only when you're requesting, but what the cohort you want to get information from. Then there's, what do we mean when we say CDR 0? I said there were 356 individuals who are presently in the active cohort who are CDR 0. Some of them may have been, through their longitudinal assessment, at one or more point given a CDR 0.5, very mild dementia. So not everyone has always been cognitively normal, at least as people would consider that. Do you want those individuals in your cognitively normal data or not? Do you want people with or without comorbidities? All of your decisions on that point will have effects on how many, on what the size of your available pool. What is CDR 0.5? We try to make a diagnosis of very mild Alzheimer's disease dementia, but sometimes we can't. We call it uncertain dementia. Some people we think are very mildly demented, but not because they have Alzheimer's disease dementia, they have another dementing disorder. And do you want people who have had prior stroke or currently depressed or not? So these are our current diagnostic categories. Again, CDR 0, cognitively normal controls, I think it's 356, but here it says 353. People who have dementia of the Alzheimer type, remember, they differ too with dementia severity, some 0.5, some 1, a few 2. You see DAT with comorbid disorders, then we have a smattering of people who have non-Alzheimer's dementia. We try to recruit our only people who we think have Alzheimer's disease dementia, but sometimes they get here and we find out they have another disorder. We continue to follow them. If you want people to be biomarker positive or biomarker negative, not everyone has biomarker studies. So again, that can reduce the sample from which you want to recruit. We've not coordinated because of gaps in funding, not coordinated when the biomarkers necessarily are attained in a regular manner. We've decided that we'll try to get all studies, imaging, biofluid studies on an every 3-year basis, funding permitting. And the most longitudinal biomarker data are in our best funded longitudinal study, that's the adult children study. So if you're thinking of making a request for either access to participants or to their data, it's best to talk to us first to know all these different variabilities that may influence the individuals that you have or the tissue that you get. Challenges and opportunities. I don't know if this projects well. This is the NIH Appropriations. You see it began with this about the amount of money that the NIH allocated in 03, okay? And then NIH has increased the amount of allocation until recently. It's been flat. But even though there's more money going to the NIA, when you account for inflation, the amount of money that they actually have to distribute has decreased by about 21%. So the real money available to fund research has gone down quite dramatically over this period of time, 2003 to now. And the prospects are flat or reduced appropriations. How many of you here are current members of Congress talking about increasing spending? It's not going to happen. So even if they keep it flat, we will still lose a great deal of purchasing power from our primary funder of our research, the NIH. This is the success rates of R01s throughout the various institutes of the NIA and the NIH, and the NIA falls right in the middle. So we know it's not one of the better funding agencies, but it's not the worst either. Here's the success. There are two factors that increase or decrease your chances of being funded. A large grant, defined as over $500,000, in the first budget year over that has about an 8% chance, that's the size of the grant, if you're already an established PI, if you've already had funding success. Your chances of getting that large grant funded, you have to be in the top 8% of all applications. If it's less than $500,000, the direct cost of the first year's budget, then it goes up to 11%. You have a better chance if you're an early stage principal investigator, so in R01. Again, if it's less than $500,000, you have a 16% chance. If it's higher, then it goes down. And if you're another type of new principal investigator, you can see about the same. So it varies on the size of the grant and whether you've been successful in the past or not. So that's one challenge. Here's another challenge. New criteria for the diagnosis of dementia due to Alzheimer's. We talked about this last year. The criteria were published a year ago at this time. And the big thing for Alzheimer's disease dementia, really, it's quite good compared to how we've been operating. They have the same principle of intra-individual decline, but they suggest that we can enhance the confidence that the diagnosis is accurate by looking at molecular biomarkers, either CSF, A-beta, tau, phospho-tau, or amyloid creatine. And then there are downstream biomarkers, downstream of the pathology, volume reduction, metabolic hypometabolism, that also can help, but aren't as quite as good as the molecular biomarkers. This is exactly what we've been doing. And by the way, those of us that work in the Memory Diagnostic Center increasingly are turning to biomarker assays in difficult cases or atypical presentations. So I think this is already something that is we ourselves are utilizing in the clinical, not just the research arena. And I think increasingly more clinicians will use these biomarkers as well. So the key criteria for Alzheimer's disease dementia are unchanged. These new criteria also establish preclinical Alzheimer's disease, something that we've been doing for now 3 decades. And then it turns to mild cognitive impairment. Of course, we're all interested in identifying the cognitive decline in its very earliest stage, the mildest stage possible. When the original criteria, operational criteria for mild cognitive impairment were published in 1985, it was distinct. This condition, mild cognitive impairment, was distinguished from Alzheimer's disease dementia on 2 major facets. One, only a single cognitive domain was affected, and it happened to be memory, so we've heard the term amnestic MCI. Dementia requires at least 2 cognitive domains: memory, executive function, language, attention, visual, spatial. So MCI originally was 1 cognitive domain. And 2, for dementia, a prerequisite is that the cognitive impairment has to adversely affect the individual's ability to carry out his or her daily activities, whereas in MCI, function was to be preserved. Well, as people gained experience with MCI, it became clear that many people who meet MCI criteria have cognitive dysfunction in domains other than memory, in addition to memory. So there are multiple cognitive domains. So in 2004, the criteria were revised to indicate that it's okay to have multi-domain MCI, either amnestic or non-amnestic. So no longer restricted to a single cognitive domain. So now how do we distinguish this entity from dementia? Well, because function is preserved. So this is the distinction as of 2004 between dementia and MCI. Well, new criteria for MCI were published last year. Key criteria are the same. This function is supposed to be essentially preserved. But then in the operationalization of how you determine functional preservation, they say, well, you can have mild problems in carrying out things such as driving, finances, shopping, cooking, and you may need some support or assistance to carry out these activities. So now the mild problems blur the distinction between mild Alzheimer's disease dementia. We think that that's terribly surprising if the illness is the same illness that causes this mild cognitive impairment and AD dementia. It's the same process, it's just a continuous condition. Certainly not all MCI is caused by Alzheimer's disease, just as not all dementia is caused by Alzheimer's disease. But for those for whom MCI does have underlying Alzheimer's disease, that's the earliest symptomatic stage of Alzheimer's disease. I don't think these semantic arguments are going to be too much longer in the literature. I hope not, because I think people will be turning again to biomarkers, and it's upon us. So last month, in April, the Food and Drug Administration approved a F18 Amyloid tracer, imaging tracer, for a very broad indication for patients being evaluated for Alzheimer's disease and other causes of cognitive decline. So we've been using PIB, that's the gold standard for amyloid imaging. As you know, PIB has a very short half-life. It requires an on-site cyclotron. Very few academic or clinical centers have an on-site cyclotron, so it's been really restricted to academic centers. But florbetapir, or the trade name Amyvid, is an F18 compound, which means it can be commercially produced and shipped out to a St. Luke's or to a St. Anthony's, and you can do PET scanning there with this agent for anyone you wish. And the company is going to deliver Amyvid for commercial use beginning next month in June to selected sites, and they hope that as they ramp up within a year, they'll have virtually anyone can get amyloid imaging. There are lots of questions. Who do we use this for? What is the clinical indication? Who pays for it? And what do we do with people who have ambiguous results? We're finding that already with our CSF studies. But it's going to come. And as I say, it's already here. There are other F18 amyloid tracers that are being developed, as you can see, and also other molecular pathologies, tracers for other molecular pathologies. All right, so those are some of the challenges and opportunity. We've grown in terms of our staff, our faculty, and we have new space that is being developed as we speak. We have new signage on our building to identify that we are now the Charles F. and Joanne Knight Alzheimer's Disease Research Center. So this is our current square footage in the first floor of the 4488 building. We're going to get about 50% increase added to what we now have. We'll keep what we have, renovate it, and add new square footage. Matter of fact, the renovations have begun. On the third floor, our current space is on the first floor. Third floor renovation has begun. This is what the new entryway is going to look like when you walk into our building. So that, you first pass the security guard, and then you have sort of a funny abutment, and then you have the pediatrics group. Well, the pediatrics group will be behind this, and here will be our entrance. And here's where the security guard sits, so the front door is right here. Here's the plaque for the naming of the Alzheimer's Disease Center for the Knights. This is the floor plan. For the second floor, this is the entry level. So we have this space now, we'll keep it, and we'll add this space. So this is the new entrance. Here's the pediatric group here. This is where some people associated with the practice plan are presently ensconced, but are going to be moving. So we'll have this new space here. And then on the top floor, the third floor, we'll get additional space as well. So as I say, it's going to add immeasurably to our current space. Also a new opportunity is the Diane Therapeutic Trials Unit, led by Randy Bateman, to take the Diane cohort and have it enroll in clinical trials to prevent or at least delay the onset of the symptoms of Alzheimer's disease. It's been extraordinarily successful in a short period of time. 10 different companies now form the Pharma Consortium. 14 drugs have been nominated for consideration for the inclusion in the initial clinical trials. The Alzheimer's Association has supported this effort with the largest grant it's ever awarded. And as I indicated earlier, a grant application to the NIA is being resubmitted this July. I mentioned that Randy is the leader. He's, of course, aided by many individuals, including Anna Santa Cruz and Susan Mills. And they're going to be joining us on the third floor of that renovated space that I just indicated to you. So we have this is a great time in Alzheimer's disease research. Another group, the Alzheimer Prevention Initiative, led by Eric Ryman and Pierre Theriault in Phoenix, also is going to be conducting a secondary prevention trial in individuals with a presenilin mutation, primarily the family in Medellin, Colombia, South America, but some individuals in North America, and so we're trying to work with them to see how we cannot compete for the same sites and the same participants. And so we have been collaborating with them quite a deal, and we're going to be serving as the site management organization. We're going to select the sites and make certain that we get enough U.S. participants into the trial to meet their needs. Some of you heard earlier this month about the National Alzheimer's Project Act that was signed in 2011 into law by President Obama, but they finally suggested that their partial funding of this National Alzheimer's Project Act, and Secretary Kathleen Sebelius released the initial announcement. She heads the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. So the goal of NAPA, N-A-P-A, is to try to prevent Alzheimer's disease or treat it by 2025. It has other aims, as you can see here, to enhance care, to support patients and families, improve public awareness, and follow data in individuals in a better way so we understand the illness more. They propose now $156 million to be dedicated to Alzheimer research and care by the government. This is down a little bit. The original goal was $200 million. And the announcement on May 15th was they found in NIH $50 million that they would appropriate in 2012. And a large part of that is going to go to two trials that you've heard about. One I've already mentioned, the Alzheimer Prevention Initiative, and another trial of intranasal insulin. The rest of the money is proposed. We don't have it. So $80 million for research, $26 million for other aims. The President's budget includes this. Of course, it's not appropriated, and it will not be appropriated this election year. So really, the rest of the payment of this NAPA Act is a proposal or a roadmap, and we'll have to see what the next administration is willing to do. Mentioned several times our very devoted participants. We always enjoy sharing research results with them and our appreciation for their participation at the annual participants meeting that will be held this year, June the 9th. It's at the DoubleTree at the Westport building, Westport complex. And here are the studies that will be presented to them. We'll talk about a driving study in older adults. We'll talk about why neuropsychologic testing is important for research. We have a new pilot study to look at whether Alzheimer's disease can be detected by a sensitive ophthalmologic evaluation. And Dr. Shalene from our Department of Psychiatry has another study looking at whether antidepressants, particularly type of antidepressants, may help prevent against Alzheimer's disease. Joy Snyder will talk about the different clinical trials that we're supporting presently, and it says here the DUO program, the state of the ADRC, represented by me. The DUO program is a new initiative led by Jennifer Phillips and Andre Denny from the Education Corps, where medical students who are interested and vetted will be paired with a participant or a MDC patient who is affected by Alzheimer's disease, and they will have different venues for interaction throughout their medical student year to have them gain better awareness and appreciation and knowledge about Alzheimer's disease. So that's a new program that will start this fall. Well, I'll end with this. Bart de Strooper is a noted neuroscientist, cell biologist from Belgium, and we invited him to come for the Berg Symposium, which is the 7th Berg Symposium, which is this September. And I just will share with you his acceptance. I said the 7th. Is it the 8th? Yeah, forget the 7th. It's the 8th. And it's going to be September 28th, 2012. And he replies back, "Look forward to visiting your operation again. It's the top place for transitional Alzheimer's disease research in the world." So why don't you give yourself all a big round of